Hello and welcome to the Daily Roto Premium NBA show. This is the Friday, March 26th edition. Andrew Barron here, Christopher Pacheco here. Pacheco, we have 11 games. A lot of guys have changed teams. The vast majority of them will not be making their debut for their new teams tonight. So this is just a mess. Half of them are on the front end of a back-to-back. And I got a hard out at 5 Eastern, so let's get right into it. I think the wackiest game to figure out here is Portland and Orlando, because Portland has no Damian Lillard. They are probably getting Yusuf Nurkic back in limited minutes, and then Orlando is just like they traded everyone, and no one has the reinforcements are not here yet, and they will additionally be without Terrence Ross. So pick a side, any side, and talk to me about this game.
Please. Certainly one of the messier slates I've ever had to deal with, and I thought yesterday was pretty bad. This is an all-timer. We are dealing with an all-timer here, given the trade deadline and Luka doubtful, Orlando Portland just an absolute disaster, especially the Orlando side. You know, Portland still has CJ McCollum tonight. I haven't seen anything in terms of him potentially resting or anything like that. So that is going to make Mr. McCollum a pretty darn good play tonight. I mean, he's going to project for 50+. His rates essentially turn into Dame's when Dame isn't out there. They've actually been a little bit higher than that. So you could argue we're being conservative on some of these inputs, but it's not going to matter. He's going to rate for 50+. Should have all the opportunity in the world here. We also don't know if Norman Powell is going to play. He's their new acquisition. Right. We know that Gary Trent and Rodney Hood are obviously out of town. They're with Toronto. But if Norman Powell doesn't play, all of a sudden Anthony Simmons might enter the real value conversation, simply because they would need Simons to really give him some real minutes here. We're already projecting him for 25. He might have to play 30+. If no Powell, and we might see like a CJ Ellaby or some random come into the rotation, so that they have enough guys. So for Portland, I think it is pretty straightforward. I know Nurkic is coming back tonight, but certainly don't expect him to play full minutes, and they have Cantor. So, there's going to be a little bit of a split there. I think that essentially kills both of them on DraftKings. You can't really consider either guy at their price tags. And then Cantor, even at 6K on FanDuel, I think now is essentially risky enough with Nurkic back in there and us not really knowing how many minutes he's going to play. So I'm feeling Andrew, I'm feeling pretty good about the Portland side where we're at right now. If no Norm Powell, I think you're going to see something different, and I think you're going to see a lot of Simons from us. The Orlando side is just this has to be one of the more brutal situations I've ever had to cover. They don't have anybody, so they don't have any of the new guys they traded for, right? So Wendell Carter Jr., Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, those are some of the guys that they picked up. None of those guys are going to play tonight. And on top of that, they traded the core of this team, which had been for many years. Vooch, Aaron Gordon, Fournier, they're gone. So is Gary Clark as well. And Gary Clark sucks, but he would have been able to play some minutes for this team tonight, some real minutes. And they're not going to have his services. So we have Mr. Michael Carter Williams projecting as the top Magic in this slate, which that should tell you all you need to know, right? It is as gross as it gets. We had so many rates to work with here. Like, I had to nuke them so hard. And even
here's the players. Here's who's available. Okay, and then maybe people can understand why Michael Carter Williams is rating as the top Magic. We have Michael Carter Williams. We have Dwayne Bacon, Kem Birch, Chasen Randall, Chuma Okeke, James Ennis, Mo Bamba, and Karim Maine. Those are the available players for the Magic tonight. So, you laugh all you want at MCW being the top dude, but he's by far the best guy with the ball in his hands of all of those dudes. It's real gross.
Kareem Maine is a G leaguer, by the way, that was with the championship team, and has to play like real NBA minutes right now, like tonight.
Right.
Otherwise, they can't play the game because they would be short a dude.
I mean, that G League championship team with Karim Main versus this Orlando Magic team tonight, take away Karim Main, like it's a ball game.
We got a ball game. Yeah, probably not. But all jokes aside, it's pretty bad on the Orlando side. The good thing on I'm going to be honest with you. The good thing on DraftKings is they're not really making this a decision for you. Like Michael Carter Williams is nearly 7K on that site, so I think they're essentially baking in a potential 40 spot there for him. That's nuts. James Enos is 6K on DraftKings. Come on, you're not doing that. Mo Bamba, if he started, I think it might be interesting at 4,800 on DraftKings. Dwayne Bacon's nearly 5K. Ken Burch is almost 4,500. Like they kind of did it. They did you the favor, and you're not really playing as many Magic.
It's helpful, yeah. Honestly, it's pretty
on
nice.
FanDuel is where it's right. It's a little messy with Michael Carter rating really well, and some of those dudes cheaper.
Yeah, and we're missing a lot of dudes to spend up for because, which is what you'd normally want in this situation, right? You're like, okay, cool. Well, I've got all this value, so I can pay up for Dame and Luka, and well, they're not around. Harden is questionable, like he was questionable last game and missed. Like, wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again tonight. We've got Giannis and Jokic, so there are still guys to spend for, but without a bunch of them, when it's two, maybe three instead of 5, maybe 6, then you're looking at real concentrated sort of cores of lineups, right? You're looking at these lineups that have you've got Jokic and Giannis and 3 Magic dudes, and that's not really. I don't know. I don't want to do that.
No. I know they just have 8 guys, but this is going to be a real struggle here, even without Dame. Portland's still projecting to blow this team out, and it is for very obvious reasons. I think Bamba, if he started, we'd have to project more minutes in 21. So that's the one that I don't know how to feel about that one just yet. Just because right now I think we are projecting him off the bench and projecting Birch as the starter, but that could easily be flip flopped if they just want to go with a young guy and give him minutes. So we'll see.
It's possible, yeah. BDN with a nice alternate title suggestion that came in after the gun. Hit me up earlier if you're into that. With Mo Bamba number 5, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. I just kind of went for the full chaos of this whole thing and named it after Dr. Strangelove, which to me made a lot of sense. But
sure,
it's an ugly slate. I do think sort of long term on Portland, the return of Nurkic is probably going to hurt Carmelo quite a bit because he just can't. He doesn't have the lateral quickness to guard any wings anymore. So he was decent-ish, playing as in a backup 5 role, and he's not going to. There's a lot of matchups where I think, even though you'd think with okay, they got rid of Harris and Hood and are replacing it with just Powell, so in theory there's more kind of wing minutes, but Melo was getting a lot of center minutes, and those were where he was excelling. So I know not a lot of people are playing him often anyway, but I kind of have, and he's had some really nice games, and I'm not sure that we're going to see as many of those going forward, or they're just going to be harder to peg. So it's a wild one. Be careful with Orlando tonight, especially on FanDuel. I don't know. I probably would not play 3 of them. I think I would max it at 2 just to be careful. And yeah, there's they gotta play. They can't, even if they're getting blown out, they're still gonna get run.
Yes.
Which is nice for safety reasons, but it's just gonna be a little sketchy to be relying on all of that and then playing right into it. It just if you do a ton of min price Orlando guys, then you're looking at a very obvious rest of your lineup. So I don't know that I love doing that.
Vegas is much better at me than this, but when I saw this, okay, not seeing anything, right, Andrew? Just not seeing anything, just seeing the names. When I saw the names and I saw what was happening with Orlando, I immediately thought this team might score 85 to 90 real life points tonight.
Right.
I think the downside is I think the downside is even below that. And I know Vegas can't necessarily project that low of a total here for an NBA team, but we're talking about a borderline. I mean, this is borderline NBA team. A lot of these dudes are just not very good. They don't have a lot of ball handlers. So, 80 to 90 points is very well within the range of outcomes for this Magic team tonight. And then it's like, no, it doesn't matter how many, minutes they play, 80 to 90 points. It's just that's going to be really bad for whoever's scoring there.
Right. Yeah. Like over under 0.5 dudes that are going to play for the Magic tonight that accumulate 0 minutes in the 21-22 season, I think is like a real thing. Like one of these guys, if not more than one, will just be like out of the league. So that's fun. And that's what you're getting into. So be careful. Also, speaking of studs that will not be playing, Luka Doncic is doubtful. So we've got Jalen Brunson is going to be an exceptional value. They don't have JJ Redick or Nicola Melli in town yet. And they did also lose Wes Iwundu and James Johnson, who haven't been playing a ton, but like they've been big parts of the rotation at various times throughout the year. So you're getting a lot of Dallas guys that are also popping as like really nice values just because the thing when Luka's gone, there's just so much to go around. But I'd be careful with it because Dorian Finney-Smith at 3,900 is just like, wow, that's such a play. But he and Maxi Kleber, the same idea. Like they're guys that in theory get a bit of a rate boost, but I don't think that's really super warranted. Like we don't have much choice but to give it to them. But like they are made much better by Luka Doncic, right? It's like him finding them, and their offense comes from, does he find them for an open shot because the whole defense collapsed toward him? And that happens a lot. I think it's Josh Richardson is the guy that like will just kind of take over and play a lot of hero ball. He'll play like Norm Powell tonight. So I don't know. He's the one for me. What do you got on Dallas?
Yeah, you're right on. You're spot on Maxey and Dorian Finney-Smith. I mean, their rates are scaling up, especially their usage. They're scaling up without Luka. But when you see a Maxey 26 fantasy points for Maxey Kleber, like you always have to know that that's around where he taps out anyway. Right. So like the upside beyond that is if he gives you 26 tonight, you're so happy. Like you don't expect 30 plus out of that because it's not very likely, no matter whether Luka's in or not. Just not going to have that big of an effect. I do think Jalen Brunson, it's a massive effect, right? That's why he's projecting the way he is. And I think it's a massive effect for Kristaps, even though this year he really hasn't taken advantage of those opportunities, and his usage hasn't really gone up without Luka this year. But again, he hasn't had many opportunities with that this season. So I do think the projection is gaudy, but it makes sense why. Like someone's going to have to take a big usage on this team. Someone typically does, and if it's not Luka, it's Kristaps. So it makes sense to me. And I think more than anything, I think Brunson's the one that essentially has to get rostered tonight, just because the range of outcomes there just improves so much without Luka. He's a starting point guard essentially for this team. So I think 35, which is his projection, becomes a real thing, and then a little bit beyond, like he could get you 40 on a really good night. And the downside isn't very significant. Like maybe a fantasy output in the 20s. If he gets you into the 20s, he might not be a tournament winner tonight, given his ownership, right, Andrew?
No, I wouldn't think so. He's 4,800 on FanDuel. What do you have his DK price by any chance?
It's 45 on DraftKings, so pretty cheap.
Okay, yeah. So on DK, it's like conceivable that 28 points or whatever gets into a tournament winning conversation there, but still not likely. I would say, I hear you. I think that Brunson is okay to play with others because he's the guy with all the assist rate, right? He's the guy who's going to have the ball, so he can like dime up these other guys. But I would be careful about like Richardson, Hardaway, and Porzingis. I think one of them's going to have a really nice game, but I'd be surprised to see like multiple of those dudes get there in a big way. So like Brunson, I think is fine independently, like play him with any of those guys, but I wouldn't play those dudes together. But I would like seriously consider play exactly one of Staps, Richardson, Hardaway because like it's a little tough to tell. Like they can all do it in different ways, but one of them is probably going to have a significant role in the offense tonight.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I wouldn't do Maxi Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith together. Like I wouldn't play those two together. If I was to play one, I'd just play one between those two. That's another thing that I'd consider with Dallas. You mentioned Timmy Hardaway Jr. He's the other one that gets a pretty big boost on the rates without Luka and on the minute side as well. Price tag isn't in the 4s anymore on FanDuel, but I still think of him as a pretty solid tournament play. He's not going to be as owned as some of the other guys in Dallas, so I think it provides some pretty good leverage, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that makes sense. On the Indiana side of the ball, I mean, they have a clean injury report, so like not a ton to talk about here. Brogdon is down to 6,500 on FanDuel, and LeVert is up to 7,800 on FanDuel. So, I mean, LeVert's going to be 1% owned. Do you have any? I know that's insane. Like that price tag is just too nuts. Do you have any interest in like, well, there's so much value, you can kind of do what you want and spend, and like LeVert can go into the 40s pretty easily. Is that even on your radar at all, or is that just way too steep of a price tag?
On FanDuel, it would be. On FanDuel, it would be, just because if we know how the dynamics play over there. The price tag is certainly out. Like it's big. It's big, and it's not right because his assist rate with Brogdon just hasn't been great. Like our 18% assist rate there is pretty on point with what's been happening. So he's just not like the de facto point guard with Brogdon in there, but he can still get you 34 minutes, and a 40 burger isn't out of the conversation if he has an efficient night. So I think he is in play, but it would take some failure from others, because I don't think 50-60 is very likely.
No, I don't think so either. Like I would take it. So if we're thinking about this on like a macro scale, like we've got CJ McCollum clocking in around 60% ownership, and Karis LeVert at like 0.1, like 0.4, like less, probably 1. So like, give me 60-1 odds that Karis LeVert outscores CJ McCollum because they're about the same price. Like, yeah, sure, I'll take that. Like then I would be into it, but it's not quite that easy because you've also got like a little bit more expensive, but same idea is like Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Fred VanVleet, Anthony Edwards, Colin Sexton, Wiggins, quite a bit cheaper. Like there's just two, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like significantly cheaper, but Tim Hardaway, like there's a lot of dudes available at shooting guard on FanDuel tonight. So like it's too cute by half for me. Like, cause he could score into the 40s, but like you said, the 50s probably aren't happening. And one of those dudes probably does get into the 50s. So it's like, it's a little too much for me.
It's like a lot of failure, really, from the shooting guard position that you'd expect. That one is tough. Which it was like 6,500.
Yeah, I think it would be a little more feasible to start taking stabs there, because that's when the 40s you're like, okay, yeah. I mean, if Devin Booker scores 47, like, and Karis LeVert scores 42, and he's $700 cheaper, like, then we're talking. Like we're cooking with gas. Then, like, it's reasonable. But I think I would stay away. And then Sabonis 8,800. Like if enough value keeps opening up, then his 45 points are going to be pretty useful. So it's not a crazy thing to do. Dallas is like, Kleber's a pretty good guy to guard Sabonis, so I wouldn't be like jumping all over it, but he's a play. Another shooting guard that we didn't even mention there is James Harden. He is a member of the Brooklyn Nets. They play the Detroit Pistons tonight. Detroit is on the front end of a back-to-back, and Detroit's got some news. There's a fair amount there, but have you heard anything about Harden? Should we just like dust that off real quick and then get into Detroit?
Nothing definitive. All I've heard is he's Q, and my guess is he'll probably like a game time decision, just like he was against Portland. So certainly nothing definitive. And if he doesn't play, we're talking about a different conversation, right? Like it's going to be more value coming out of Brooklyn instead of one guy really dominating the conversation in Brooklyn, because it's essentially James Harden than everyone else. In Brooklyn, he's projecting for 60 plus. or nearly that on FanDuel, and then the next highest guy is Joe Harris at 25. So it's a completely different conversation if James Harden misses. We're talking about Tyler Johnson entering the starting lineup potentially and playing real minutes. Bruce Brown would project much better. Just a whole different combo.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a big if then to make, but luckily this time it's not as late. Last when we were discussing this on Wednesday, that was the 10 o'clock game, and tonight it is first thing. So that's the actual first game, starting off by itself. So pretty useful there. But like also, be prepared half an hour before lock that like there's going to be some real shakeups possible. On the Detroit side of the ball, it looks like Hamidou Diallo will be available to make his debut tonight. DeLon Wright was shipped out to Sacramento, so we've got the Dennis Smith Jr. and Saban Lee show again. But DSJ is questionable, so if he isn't there, then like Saban Lee becomes like a min price, or I don't know if it's min price, but like a very cheap, like monster value that you like gotta play kind of thing. So talk to me about Detroit. He has been priced still? Yeah, okay.
He is actually been priced on both sides. He hadn't really been playing lately.
Exactly, yeah. It was 7 minutes a game lately. Yep.
I mean, honestly, listen, I think you can risk him tonight even if DSJ plays. This sounds cute, but he's already projecting as a neutral value on DraftKings. So maybe on FanDuel you're a little bit timid given all the things that happen over there, but 3,100 on DraftKings. And what we know out of Saban Lee is he was balling when Delon Wright wasn't around.
Yep. He would come off the bench but then close. Like he was getting more minutes than DSJ in half of those games despite generally not starting. Yeah,
man. So, and the thing is, I know Frank Jackson has been starting, but like he's starting at the 2, right? He's not – I really doubt that Frank Jackson is going to steal minutes out of these young guys that they're trying to play. We're not expecting Corey Joseph to play tonight, so it should be if DSJ plays his show along with Saban Lee's. And Lee is just not going to get it. I don't think he's going to be owned tonight. Matchup against Brooklyn is a good one. Like there's some tasty things there that I'd like in MME. That one stands out to me. As one that I play simply because DSJ isn't that cheap, right? Andrew, he's 5K on FanDuel and he's 46 on DraftKings. Playable, but at Saban Lee's price tag, I prefer him, frankly. And then the other situation we're having is the Diallo one. You mentioned that. And then who's going to start at shooting guard for this team tonight remains a mystery because they also have Rodney Magruder coming back. They had been starting Frank Jackson, but I think he's dust. If Wayne Ellington could start, they could play Magruder, and Frank just doesn't play a minute. So that's kind of live to happen tonight. And even if Frank starts, he's not guaranteed to have a big 20-plus minutes aren't going to be a thing anymore. So I would not be considering that one in DFS.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's conceivable that they just sort of plug Diallo in for Frank Jackson and then run the rest of their normal starting lineup. We don't really know what Diallo's minutes limit will be, but presumably he'll have one. So we'll see. Jeremy Grant, reasonable play. He's the power forward makes it a little less appealing just because small forward's been a little bit weak this year in general. But he's 7,300 on FanDuel, 4 or 5% owned. That's around his optimal percentage. He's not bad chalk tonight. He's just kind of not going to get played a lot, and he's reasonable. It's not a great Brooklyn defense, so I think that
I have a minutes take to take there.
Okay,
I have a minutes take there. So Grant last game he was playing really well. He was playing really well. Won 10 from 20 from the field. And the game was competitive, Andrew. He only played 31 and a half. He didn't get into foul trouble either. And this has been a thing of late for Mr. Grant. He played nearly 36 in a competitive game the game before that. But the minutes haven't really been there the way they were earlier in the season. So I don't know if they're just trying to manage these dudes already. I mean, the second half is still – it's not like they only have 10 games to go here, but I noticed this with Grant, and I noticed this with some of the Indiana guys, Brogdon and Sabonis. They're not playing like the routine 37 anymore. They're more playing like 33 to 35 in a really good game. And Grant played really well last game and played 31 and a half. So I think there's some downside to that. Not saying that he's not playable, but I wanted to get that take in there because it was something that I saw when I was looking at their popcorn machine.
No, it's a great point, and it is a little concerning. Like, I think that does make some sense more for Detroit than it would for Indiana, because like Detroit stinks, like, and they're at the bottom, like they're firing up the tank now, like they want L's. So like it doesn't make a lot of sense to play Jeremy Grant a ton of minutes. It does make sense to play Dennis Smith Jr. a ton of minutes. Like, let that guy fire. So yeah, exactly.
So I'm a little concerned there.
Yep. I think that's a good point. Boston and Milwaukee are both on the front end of the back-to-back. These guys played each other on Wednesday nights, so we get a rematch. And, Evan Fournier and Mo Wagner are not going to be available yet. Luke Cornett is not walking through that door. So the Celts are going to need minutes from, like, Grant Williams and Aaron Nesmith and some just, like, bad players tonight. They shipped out Tice as kind of a cap clearing. They're trying to get under the tax so they don't start the repeater clock right away. And they're going to need minutes from some bad players tonight. This game could get ugly. But they do have the four good players still. So I don't know. What do you got for me? What do you think is happening for Boston as far as how the rest of the minutes shake out after those, like, top four and then Robert Williams?
Yeah, it's honestly, from a DFS angle, it's not going to matter. Taco Fall is going to play minutes. He's going to play real minutes, like rotations tonight. He might play like closer to 15 if they want to play big. If they wanted to play big, he would have to play a little bit more simply because, as you said, they don't have Tice anymore. Tristan is out as well, which is the other big one here. So Taco's going to play some minutes. I'm expecting Nesmith to play some minutes. Graham Williams, he's going to have to give him some tonight as well. I wonder if one of Carson Edwards or Waters plays. I bet you if they're down, like if they're just down, they might give Carson some minutes just to, just like as a guy that can get hot off the bench type of thing. Waters can't really do that, but Carson can. So that might be more of like a what is happening in the game type of thing. If they need defense, I think they could play Waters. He has a good reputation for that, but again, not going to be relevant for DFS. The only relevant guys here are Smart, Tatum, Brown, Kemba, and then now Robert Williams. He enters the very relevant conversation. I'm giving him 27 minutes tonight, Andrew, but the possibility of 30 plus now is wide open, just completely wide open. If he's playing well and stuff, 30 plus is very within reach now. That way they don't have to play Taco as much, right? That way they don't have to play Grant Williams as a backup five. So honestly, they're probably rooting for that to happen, that Rob is having a good game, not getting into foul trouble. So I think there's some upside there beyond what we're projecting. And he's just 6K on FanDuel.
Right. I do think the foul trouble is pretty scary in general because, like, Giannis really got bottled up by Smart on Wednesday. Like, he did a really nice job on him. And that is somewhat repeatable. Like, Smart can hang with dudes that are much bigger than he is just because he's so strong. But, like, it's not going to work over and over again. And it has, like, they played against Milwaukee a lot in the last, like, 7 years when both Giannis and Marcus Smart were on each other's teams. And it's not like Smart is just, like, shutting him down in general. Giannis has been a real Celtics killer. Like, they have not had dudes to deal with him. So, and they definitely don't tonight. And Williams is, like, not quite disciplined enough to really, like, just stand there and try to get verticality. Like, I don't think it's going to work very well. Giannis is just, like, so goddamn strong. So it's a great spot for Giannis, and it's potentially a scary foul trouble spot for Rob. So, like, if he gets, like, out of control chalk, which is also conceivable, I think people really want to play him. He's such a fun per minute producer, and, like, he's got a reasonable price tag still. There's lots of paths for failure for him, which is true of most centers, but I think this is a little scary for him.
It has to be. But the thing with Grant too is just like he's so undersized. He just won't be really able to handle Giannis in that way. You know what I mean? So that is just, it is a trouble spot for Boston. We had mentioned that the other night, and to their credit, they hung around really the entire game. Giannis really struggled for most of it.
He did
as well, but it's still such a good spot for him. This time around, right, Andrew, he should get some ownership because of just the way that the slate is going. Like we'll see if Harden plays. Maybe that would take some ownership away, but if it doesn't, he's probably going to be more popular this time around on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's still showing as like a 12% owned guy. So I'm very comfortable taking some shots there for sure. Even at ownership, like I'm willing to play 30+% of Giannis, of course. It is a good matchup still. So.
It definitely is. That's the thing. It's like he struggled the other night in it. So, hopefully some of the field is like, scout taking that and saying, well, it's not going to work this time. But no, this is a really nice spot for Giannis. You're right. If Harden gets ruled out, which will happen before lock, then Giannis is going to turn into the 40% owned guy because he is the stud you can pay for at a 2-position spot on FanDuel because Jokic is just the one center. I think people are still going to want to play Rob Williams and whatnot. So Giannis, I think, will end up in the 40-50% owned area if there is no Harden. So that's I don't know, make of that what you will. I do think there's some merit to playing the Nick Claxton. That's the previous game, which that's reasonable too. But that's a different strategy. Bobby Wagner is not in that play this guy and hope the game blows out and he'll get the fourth quarter run spot anymore. So PJ, especially with PJ Tucker still out, he's just not. He's too important for their rotation, so he's not out there when they empty the bench, which we've talked about ad nauseum. Anybody else you care for on the Milwaukee side of the ball?
I'm looking at their price tags. Man, Middleton 8,300 on DraftKings looks pretty damn bad. Drew, I would risk an MME on DraftKings. I would still take shots on Middleton, Drew, Dante shooting guard eligible on FanDuel. That is a tough position tonight, but I would risk those guys in MME. Middleton, Drew, Dante on FanDuel. That's probably my cutoff there. And then Drew on DraftKings, I would do. I think I'm out on Middleton on DraftKings just entirely. Out entirely.
Yeah, I might be out on Drew on FanDuel. It's 7,800. That's a little rugged.
Okay.
And he'll get, he's not going to get much ownership, but it's still that's tough. I mean, there's other plays at point guard, so.
Sure.
Let's see here. Phoenix and Toronto. This is let's skip that one for now. That's not the most exciting game. Miami is on the back end of a back-to-back. They're playing against Charlotte. We've got Jimmy Butler questionable, who's another big time stud tonight. Yeah, that's a big deal. Dragic is already out, and they don't have their traded guys available yet. They Bielitsa and Oladipo, and eventually LaMarcus Aldridge probably. They're not there yet. So. What do we got for Miami tonight?
No, this one's tricky because Jimmy, as I mentioned yesterday on the show, it changes everything for Miami, but then it kind of changes slate too, just because Kendrick Nunn was a thing, Bam was a massive thing. He turns into a closer to 50 fantasy point guy without Jimmy in there, and his price tags are still down if that scenario happened. So it's a massive, very, very massive thing going on here, Andrew. Jimmy's rates in general have just been lower recently with everyone in there. We've continued to mention that, but it's still worth mentioning. He hasn't really even been at 30+ assist rate. So next time that we talk about Jimmy, he might be even lower than this in our projections. I keep dragging him down and down on our stuff. We're now at 32.5 on his assist rate, and he's at 37 on the season. So you can tell that I'm making an effort to kind of nerf him from that perspective.
Because it's that 37 is not consistent. It was when everyone was out, he was pushing 50, and it's been pretty low otherwise. Because Bam handles the ball a lot. Bam does a lot of passing.
Yeah, no, it makes all the sense in the world why this is happening. And then the usage rate. It's a little bit wonky, right? Because it's scaling up to nearly 28%, but we don't have Dragic. We don't have Kelly O anymore, right? We actually have Ariza now, starting and playing real minutes for this team, and he's not a high usage guy. He's not a high usage guy, so someone's going to have to take the shots, or more shots, I should say. And Jimmy's one of the ones that's scaling up because he's the highest usage player in Miami. So I think on the surface, things are looking good for Jimmy in our projections, but there's some downside here that we're not necessarily projecting. So I think the projection right now is like a best case scenario. The one that we have right now feels like it's not even a median. It's like starting to project a little bit more than that. But the bigger news here, Andrew, is if he misses, because I think that would open up Kendrick Nunn. That would open up Tyler Hero a little bit more, and that would give Bam Adebayo a path to be a real play on this slate.
Yeah, so like speaking specifically on FanDuel, like Bam is one of my favorite players. Like he's awesome. He's a very underrated player, and I quite enjoy him for fantasy a lot of the time too. Problem is he's now center eligible on FanDuel, which is really not what you want.
That's a
much
bummer.
Nicer having him at power forward. Yeah. I mean, he plays center, so it makes sense. But it was pretty cool having him at power forward often because he's another guy like those. The centers are the highest variance plays, and those are the ones you want to play the most generally in fantasy for tournaments. And he's $8,000 at center, and like that's a little rugged tonight. Hero, I think, is actually in play at he's 5,200 at shooting guard. Like that's cheap enough that even with Jimmy, like it's doable. I mean, the problem is he's not very good. But like that's getting down to a price where I'm like kind of into like taking some bites. I don't know. Obviously, if Jimmy's out, like then he's just going to become chalk, and I'm kind of less into it because then you can be like, all right, well, give him more shots. He's not very good at taking them, so like whatever. I'm willing to like it's easier to bank on his failure there, but like at 5,200, even with Jimmy, like there's if the shots fall, and I'd rather take the shot on him at with Jimmy at 5% owned than without Jimmy if he's 22% owned or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. That makes all the sense in the world to me. I think Trevor Ariza is the other discussion on DraftKings is he's really cheap and has been started. He's starting without Kelly Owen there, Andrew. Yep. So that one probably gets some traction. I know he's small forward, power forward, but if this came down to like if I'm making a lineup and it's Trevor Ariza versus Saban Lee at these price tags, like I'm gonna take Lee every single time, like just every single time. Even with Ariza starting, like he's not a high per minute guy. I just struggle to see a bigger ceiling here.
He can probably eke you out 20 points, which, to be fair, on DraftKings at 3,400 is useful because DraftKings is such tighter pricing. Like that 20 points for 3,400 can get you into the conversation. He's just like just don't even touch him on FanDuel.
Not touch him on FanDuel. I think the thing on DraftKings though is like I think Saban Lee is live for 30-35 off the bench.
Yeah, agreed.
And at 3,100. Like, you know what I mean? If it's a util conversation, like you're filling out the very last spot, it's not small forward, power forward, or point guard. You can just play whatever. I would play Lee over someone like that because I think the upside is tantalizing.
No, agreed. I think much better tournament play, Saban Lee, especially with the price tags and like he's not going to get ownership because he's probably not going to be listed as a starter, which means people won't play him because they think just people are way too attached to starting. I get it. Like there's some more secure minutes, but like starting doesn't mean closing. And like there's a lot of dudes that come off the bench and can play a ton of minutes and close, and those are going to be tournament winners. Like you can still play 30 minutes off the bench. It's doable.
Sure.
On the Charlotte side of the ball, they're pretty clean. Other than LaMelo's still 86, but we've got Hayward his price is not budged, so he's a quite reasonable play.
Yep.
Rozier's a little expensive, but he's certainly he's been moved to point guard on FanDuel. That is not as nice. Although I guess tonight, like shooting guard is more loaded than point guard anyway. So whatever, go for it. Devontae Graham is still cheap, but he's still not like he hasn't been what he was last year because Hayward's been the guy with the ball. But what do you got for me on as far as Charlotte goes?
Yeah, super clean injury report, as you mentioned. Interest and listen, don't even look at the minutes for last game for this team. Like Hayward played 18 minutes. He got the double whammy. Foul trouble early, blowout late. Just played 18 minutes, which is just not indicative of what he's actually going to play in competitive games. FanDuel, that is just such a nice tag. DraftKings not so much at 8K, but I still think he's in a playable range in MME on DraftKings, even though the price tag kind of stinks. And same with Rozier. Outside of that, on DraftKings, tough pickings. Like Devonta Green was 5,700 there. You need him to start doing the things that he was doing last year instead of the things that he's doing this year. And now it's more like he just has to shoot efficiently because he's not shooting as much and he's not handling the ball as much. So there's some trouble there for his fantasy production. But I still hold out some hope that he can turn out into what he was doing last year. Or maybe he could just shoot efficiently one of these nights, just have a good night from three. And on FanDuel at 5,100, I think that'll play. 57 on DraftKings, I got my issues. Same with PJ Washington. Too expensive on DraftKings. 6K on FanDuel seems really, really nice.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's definitely a play. Houston and Minnesota are both on the front end of a back-to-back. This is a game. What's the total on this game?
It's a basketball game.
Bad. Yeah, these are bad teams with bad defenses, and not the greatest offensive players, but they are in very nice spots for fantasy. So we could really see some fireworks here. Kevin Porter Jr. says that he is unlikely to play. Do we have him out right now? I'm assuming.
Yes, of course.
Of course. And then John Wall, he's putting up a lot of shots. We've got him for a 33% usage tonight. I think it's been higher than that without Depot. So
he was at 40 the other night without Depot. Yeah. 40 very recently.
So yeah, and no KPJ. That was they've got Christian Wood back, but they can run pick and roll together. So that helps with his assists. Wall's gonna put up some stats tonight, especially against such a poor Minnesota defense.
He's not doing the 60 thing yet, Andrew, but my goodness, with these rates, it feels like he's just going to fall into it one of these games. You don't fall into a 60 burger most of the time. You have to do a lot, but Wall's opportunity set is just insane. Just too monstrous. A 25, 15 assist game. It's just around the corner, it feels like. And this could very well be the spot against Minnesota. It is a good one. The price tags on him are fairish, I guess, for a medium projection, but we know that the upside now is just a little bit different without Depot and Kevin Porter Jr. in there. So I am very much into John Wall tonight. I know being into anyone in Houston typically is just trouble because they'll let you down more than not. This team has been horrific this year. But I do like Wall. I do like Christian Wood. Wish some of the other components were cheaper on DraftKings and even on FanDuel. A lot of these guys got a little bit of a price hike. Daniel House, Sterling Brown, they're not in the fours anymore. Neither is Deshaun Tate. So they're a little bit more expensive now as starters.
No, it's true. And I think the big thing with Wall that's made it tough for him to just go nuclear is his steal rate is down quite a bit this season. He's traditionally been a really good, 2+% steal percentage, which is, which is around 2 steals a game, right? Assuming a team gets 100 plays a game. He's down to 1.3 this year, which is, that's troublesome. And that's how he gets an easy 5 points on FanDuel or 4 points on DraftKings is taking the ball and then just running down the court and putting in a layup on the other side. So that's something you want from him, and it hasn't been happening as much. So I think that explains some of it. And to really get that 60,
same with the turnovers,
kind of need 3-4 stocks. Yeah.
I was just going to mention, same with the turnovers in terms of on FanDuel, that's a big negative because it's a -1. And, he's going to try to make things happen in this team a lot, and then sometimes it's just not happening. So you can run into 5-7 turnovers, right? And all of a sudden it's a nightmare on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you can kind of get over it if he can double and do some other things. But on FanDuel, 5-6 turnovers that's a -5-6, depending on the number of turnovers. So yeah.
Agreed. That'll be tough. And then on the Minnesota side of the ball, there's plays here. Jordan McLaughlin should be back, but not a lot otherwise.
Yeah, Jordan McLaughlin, he's doing remember what happened to Juancho earlier in the year where he was doing the Q, but not available due to conditioning or whatever. That's what's happening with McLaughlin. Because he was he was essentially available last game, and then he got hit with the not available, conditioning thing. So I think that could be the case tonight, and that's why we're not projecting him in. With guys like that in our projections, essentially we need them to tell us he's actually playing. If they're just saying he's available, but we're not going to project him in. So
then I'll go put him in for like 15 because he wasn't on the injury report, I think.
Right. So we need them to give us something in terms of a positive report there. If he doesn't play, Andrew, this is a little messy here for Minnesota because last game they didn't have Okogie nor McLaughlin, right? This game they're not going to have Okogie, and we're saying we don't think they're going to have McLaughlin either, which is actually an issue for this team because Juancho ended up playing 35 minutes last game. Granted, he was having a good game, but Vanderbilt, part of that was because Vanderbilt got into early foul trouble, and he had like 4 fouls in the first half. So he only played 13 minutes. I think there was an out there for Vandy to play some real minutes, but, he does the foul trouble thing, and then he's not doing much, and then the coach just doesn't want to play him. So it feels like
McDaniels better.
But McDaniel started last game too, by the way. So
he's playing a little more through.
We're expecting him to start, and so feels like if no McLaughlin, no Okogie, someone's going to play a lot between Vandy and Juancho, or even Layman. Maybe you can add Layman into that conversation. Someone's going to have to play a lot more minutes than what we're projecting, and we just don't know who that is because of how inconsistent Minnesota is. But Vandy had a real out to playing big minutes last game. Like I'm talking like high 20s was a possibility, and then we only saw 13 because of foul trouble.
Yeah, he's very inconsistent. But if he's like mega low owned, he's especially when more and more power forwards are getting put at center on FanDuel, it makes it tougher to get those psycho dudes at power forward. There aren't as many of them available. So he's not the dumbest thing in the world. I think he could put up, he can put up a lot of points in a hurry. He's a guy who can score 30 in 22 minutes if he's got it going. He's also a guy who can score 8 in 22 minutes because he doesn't create his own shot at all. So be careful, but he's a reasonable play with a reasonable ceiling. And there aren't as many of those at power forward now with some dudes getting moved over to center. So reasonable guy to keep your eye on in tournaments. Denver and the Pels. Pels are on the front end of a back-to-back. Neither of these teams have their guys that they traded for yet, so no Aaron Gordon in Denver, but they are short RJ Hampton. And Isaiah Hartenstein as well is out. They got JaVale McGee back to be their new backup center, but he will not be available yet. And then the Pels will not have Wes Iwundu or James Johnson. They're out of there with JJ Redick, but he'd been out of the rotation anyway, so nothing to see there really. But what are you thinking here? We got some plays? What are we doing?
We got Jokic on the Denver side, so we definitely have one of the best plays on the slate here.
Oh yeah.
Feels like it's a good spot for him. 117 total for Denver. You know he's going to create most of that. Whether scoring or assisting, that's offense revolves around him. So you love him tonight. Outside of that, you're not loving a whole lot in Denver just because Jamal Murray's priced really appropriately on DraftKings at 8,200. So the good price tags for him are gone.
Yeah, he got the bump back up on FanDuel too. Yeah, he's weird. He's been going from like 65 to 8 and back like every time they make a switch.
So that's
I think is in a playable range at 65, like that on FanDuel. That's like pretty interesting because he can blow through that. Like when he's on can score that 40 plus at 6,500. That's definitely worth it. He's going to pick up some ownership, which is a bit of a bummer, but I don't know. They're pretty short-handed tonight, so in theory, someone's going to have to get it done. Obviously, Jokic is the premier play, but New Orleans gives up a ton of three-pointers, so like Murray and Porter can hit shots.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're dropping.
No doubt. I like Porter. I like Barn on FanDuel. It's a little bit too pricey for me on the slate on DraftKings, but 5,900 on FanDuel, certainly reasonable. That's my cutoff, though. I'm not playing. Don't think I would play Paul Millsap tonight or anything. He got a price hike on DraftKings anyway. That's probably my cutoff. It's just those four for Denver, and even Jamal Murray. It's a little bit tougher tonight because of that price hike.
I agree. Chris Smith asks, would you limit the Magic overall, guys? We kind of talked about that earlier. I would. I mean, I would say max 3 is the like rational thing. I'm probably gonna max 2 just because it just feels right. Like I'm not saying that's like the most logical thing, but like I would be careful about putting 3 Magic in because that's what optos are gonna spit out, and like I just don't want to be playing with the slappies. You know, I want to get myself away from that a little bit if I can. And
well, we also got some real value, or we got some real value in other spots. So I think it's just a different slate now with the Luka news and stuff. Like before, maybe the Magic would have been, popping a little bit more in our opto, but just running now, you're not going to get as many Magic anymore.
That's true. So, yeah, especially on DraftKings where they're priced up.
Yeah, I still wouldn't play 3. I don't think 3 is for me tonight on either side. I can't do 3. Max 2.
Yeah, there's 22 teams playing tonight. So it's like you're not even on an 11-game slate, you're not really looking for game stacks as much either because it's just like so much easier to like this guy here, this guy here, this guy here. On like a 5-game slate, yeah, sure, like try to catch overtime on one of them. But like it's not as big of a deal on this big of a slate because that extra 5 minutes isn't like guaranteeing you like that 4 dudes crush value all of a sudden,
Right.
So that would be where I would stand as far as that goes. On the Pell side of the ball, I mean, they've got a nice matchup too. This is a real good game. It's just this is a pricier one. So like I think the Houston-Minnesota game will be more popular for sort of people playing a ton of plays from it. And then also obviously Orlando and Portland. But this is a real good game because these are 2 real good offenses against pretty bad defenses. Zion's too expensive, but man, he's going to do whatever he wants. Like Jokic isn't stopping him. Millsap kind of, but like they just, there's not.
It'll be Millsap. It'll be Millsap who defends him, not Jokic. But
agreed, but it's like
right.
It's the back. It's the Jokic is the last line of defense in theory, and he stinks at it. So like when Zion blows past Millsap, then it becomes Jokic's job to come in there and help, and he does not do a good job at that.
Yeah, it's ugly season for sure when that happens. You mentioned everything pretty correctly. We're not going to have Lonzo. So that opens up Mr. Naw here for us. Still pricing he's pricing the 5s now on both sides. I still think that he's playable there. Little bit tougher, right, from a ceiling perspective once you keep jumping price tags. It'll be tougher if he gets it to the 6s as well. But in the 5s, he could still reasonably put up 40 and do well at these tags. It's just that when he was in the 4s, right, he could get you like 35 and you're kind of happy about it from a ceiling perspective. Now it's you want a little bit more juice than that. But I still think he has it in him. Still playing a lot of minutes with Alonzo. Last game he played nearly 35 in a blowout. So he's back again in play tonight. Brandon Ingram, pricey again on both sides. Reasonable ceiling. It's the same thing with Zion. Like we know he doesn't do the 50s very often, but he's in play. He's in play if you think 50s is in the range of outcomes. If it's just 40, Andrew, would you really play him tonight? You're really hoping for 50 plus.
Yeah. No, it's funny. He stands out to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, Ingram, like let's do that. But yeah, the 83 is tough. I would definitely be maxing one of Zion, Ingram, Alexander Walker, just because they're all just a little overpriced. I mean, I guess Nah isn't like overpriced, but like it's kind of, like. And he's going to pick up ownership. He's not like so cheap that it's a just obvious smash, but he's getting owned like one. He's getting owned at almost 20% on a 11-game slate. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, especially at that shooting guard position, you know, like Tim Hardaway, there were other guys we talked about that were like even right at that price tag that I think make for better, just like, you know, more reasonable pivots with like similar upsides. Yeah, you know, Tim Hardaway at 4%. You've got what else was right there? There was Devontae Graham at 3%. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Maybe the shot falls. Malik Monk, if you know his shot's falling, like can he get extra run? He's at that price tag. I mean, I wish he was a little cheaper too, but you know, Herder, DiVincenzo, THT, somebody.
I mean, I think the conversation would be a little bit different on Zion, right? If he was like 7,800, and now just like getting you into the high 40s is like really exciting. Exciting in the almost nines is you got to put up 50 at some point.
Yep.
You know, you got to.
Yeah, it makes it tough. Okay, we got about 15 minutes left here, so in 4 games to get to. Memphis and Utah are both on the front end of a back-to-back, but status quo here, pretty much pretty clean injury reports. Anything you got to note here? Anybody look like a good value? Or are they all just kind of – they've settled into their current price tags?
Dude, it's Memphis, Utah. I mean, if there is ever a game to skip, it's consistency season here for both of these teams. You know what they're doing. You know Utah's playing their 10, or Memphis is playing their 10. You know Utah's playing their very regular rotation. Clarkson has been horrific lately. I mean, if there was ever a dude that was due for some correction, it was probably him. But holy cow. I mean, he shot like 1 for 15 the other night. It's been pretty rough for Mr. Clarkson lately, but it's, you know, it's still the very obvious values on FanDuel and Utah. Conley is still hovering in the 5, so on the surface it looks pretty good. Rudy is the dude because he can put up blocks and stuff on FanDuel that is projecting a bit better. But in general, Andrew, nothing jumps off the page for me in this game. I'm still wanting to play Ja, but he's still not really getting me there from in terms of what I really want from him. But he's in the 7s now, so just 40s kind of makes that exciting. So I think he's still in play, but really, not much else going on here.
No, I agree with that. Valanciunas is going to get played off the floor, so I don't think this is a spot for him. He's just not going to be able to hang defensively against Utah. But other than that, I mean, there's some plays. Just use the opto, check it out. Yeah, Ja's under-owned. Donovan Mitchell's under-owned. Rudy's under-owned. Like, there's some plays here, but like it's because they're all appropriately priced, so they're getting pretty low owned. But you know, take a look at the leverage scores, and there's definitely some dudes, just some guys with higher ceilings than their price tag. Like, you need them to blow through it, but there's definitely dudes that can do it, and a lot of 3% owned guys in here. So I'd be looking around and taking a couple shots, but nothing noteworthy really to report on it. Atlanta and Golden State. Golden State's on the back end of a back-to-back. They're still going to be short Steph Curry. They sent out Brad Wanamaker, but he wasn't really in the rotation. Didn't they move somebody else too?
Marcus Chris. Marcus Chris is the other one.
Yeah.
But he wasn't even
also inconsequential. Yeah, he broke his leg 3 months ago. So weren't worried about that. But and then Atlanta, they traded Rondo for Lou Williams, which I think is a pretty nice trade for them, actually. But Lou Williams will not be available tonight. He will be not available yet. I was going to make a dumb Magic City chicken wings joke, but it's been driven into the ground already, so I'm not going to go there. What do you got for news and notes on this game? What do you got? You got some plays you like?
The last thing on Golden State was that they don't have an injury report, but Draymond missed yesterday. He's expected to be back tonight. So let's make sure once the 5:30 comes out that we get some confirmation there. If they give us an injury report, then. But in general, we want to make sure that Draymond is playing tonight because he missed yesterday due to an illness. That is really the biggest news on the Golden State side. Obviously, Curry, you mentioned, out still. For Atlanta, DeAndre Hunter has been back, but he's been playing more. He played 25 last game. I think he's ready now for a little bit of a bigger boost. I put him at 28, which is going to hurt Tony Snell, right? Kevin Huerter isn't playing 30-plus anymore like he used to, simply because his team is healthier now. Right. Bogdanovich is playing a little bit more when he can hit his shots. Played
Solomon Hill's
31.
basically out of the rotation. Yeah, it's like it's
Yep.
it's a lot fuller on the wings.
Yeah, Solomon Hill, not really even playing a single minute. So certainly more full. Bogdanovic still has a little bit of a ceiling to him if he has his shot going. He could play 30, 31, but now he's closer to 5K. He's 4,600 on DraftKings, 42 on FanDuel. I found it kind of interesting, but not a real stocks guy, so really depends on his shot. I don't know how valuable that is on FanDuel without the stocks. It's just probably not very valuable. But did want to note that he has a little bit more of a ceiling when he has a shot going. But that's it. I got nothing else. Trey's going to show up as a pretty good leverage play as usual. I thought one of our subs yesterday made a good point in terms of Trey on FanDuel. The turnovers are a problem, and he doesn't get stocks.
Yep.
Which I think is a really interesting way to summarize Trey. Like he has to score a lot of points, a decent amount of assists, and then just not turn the ball over much for him to really get.
Yeah, he needs He needs a 35 and 15 with 2 turnovers.
Yeah, it was Mark who mentioned that. He plays a lot on FanDuel, and I thought that was a really good comment by him. Because often Trey shows up as a strong leverage play on our stuff, but doesn't seem to quite get there as often on FanDuel, does he?
It is tough, but his range of outcomes is still pretty high. It's just like, he's not a guy that's blowing through and like laying waste to all others, so you couldn't possibly compete with him. It's more like, like the Sims are taking into. I mean, they're simulations, so it takes into it. It's like, hey, this is the slate happening a million times. And at some of those times, like enough dudes fail that, his 52, if he has a nice game at 52 and like Luka only scores 54 or whatever, like that's when you get Trae Young into the thing. And also his his price tag has come down pretty significantly and the ownership has stayed down too. So that's why he's remaining a positive leverage play, because that price tag difference is really gives him more outs to be optimal. So, but yeah, it's a good point. It can be tough for Trey, and he's not getting to the foul line quite as much. Like they're not giving him that bullshit, stop right in front of the guy. And like that, he was getting to the line like 15 times a game for the first month of the season. And that, has not happened as much. Solomon Hill, we can no longer, one last note on him. We can't make jokes about him being a man in his 20s anymore. He turned 30 like a week and a half ago. I just looked it up.
Wow. Rest in peace.
I know. They were so fun because he looked a lot older than that, but now he is. Oh, well. Cleveland and the Lakers, the Los Angeles played last night. They are still down all their, big dudes. They didn't really do much at the deadline, and I got nothing for them. What, you got any big notes here? I mean, like Kuzma, like they're priced up quite a bit now too. Like you're not getting like really cheap value for the no Bron, no AD rates.
No, second out of a back-to-back is tough. Kuzma played a million minutes yesterday, but opportunities set for Kuzma and Dennis Schroeder have been pretty awesome without LeBron. Harrell's still playing an extended role because Gasol's not playing full minutes, and then Markieff played 15 yesterday. So they didn't really play him much as a center. So I thought that helped Harrell, but I think now with Gasol back in there, I mentioned yesterday on the show, there's a little bit more downside to those minutes. Say Markieff does play, his regular 25, and Kuzma's playing a million minutes. Even if Gasol's only playing 15, I think Harrell could be in a little bit of trouble there. And we need to confirm that Gasol's playing tonight. I know he had a conditioning issue recently, so I don't know if he'll be ready to play on a back-to-back here. That would be good for Harrell. If Gasol can't give it a go, and maybe this Kakok dude would get back in the rotation and start potentially for them. But I think Kuzma is going to be a play again tonight. I think Schroeder is – I'm trying to see his price tag on FanDuel. 7,200. I think that's playable. He's expensive on DraftKings at 71. Kuzma, the thing with Kuzma is he 50 now is in there, 50 plus is in there because of the opportunity set. So I think that makes him interesting, even on the second night of a back-to-back at his ownership. Cleveland, we need to double check Colin Sexton, make sure that he's ready to go. He didn't play last game.
Yeah.
Practice yesterday, so that gives us a little bit of hope that he's ready for this one. But if he's out, Darius Garland would rate much better. And then Yeti Osman started last time out. We think that's a possibility once again tonight if Sexton can't give it a go.
Yeah, agreed. And it's a weird spot at point guard. So like Schroeder, it's like, all right, that's not the craziest value in the world. He's 7,200, but like you can get real weird by spending up at point guard because it's a much shallower position. Like looking at FanDuel, the 4 most expensive point guards, Luka, Kyrie, Dame, and Steph, are not playing tonight. So Trae Young is the most expensive point guard that is playing. John Wall is not crazy owned. Jamal Murray, you got Drew, which is like that's a little much. Chris Paul, John Morant, Kyle Lowry, and then Schroeder. Like what people are by and large doing is spending down to Michael Carter-Williams, to Jalen Brunson, to Mike Conley's getting some ownership, Malcolm Brogdon. Like they're saving quite a bit. So like if you can get some 50s out of these more expensive guys, like I think it's definitely a nice way to get a little bit weird because it's not going to be common for people to spend up at point guard. And Schroeder is like a reasonable way to do that. So
right.
Don't hate that call. Cleveland's bad defensive team. Harrell could get some stuff going if he gets the big minutes for sure. Like that's a nice matchup for him.
You're definitely right on the Drew thing, by the way. I want to opt out of that one and maybe even on FanDuel because the price tag, it feels like it's assuming John is out or something. Like he essentially needs someone to be out for the ceiling, not for the project. I don't, for the media, that's not what we're talking about. It's more like 50.
Yeah, if he has a monster game, it's 42, and at 7,800, I'm not sure how good that is for you. Like he's not putting up 60 when Giannis and Middleton are both playing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yep. Okay. And then last game, which we started to talk about earlier and decided not to, is Phoenix and Toronto. Both teams are pretty clean. Phoenix is a tough team for fantasy. Like they're not a fun team to play against. And Toronto's not bad either. I mean, not a bad like defensive team. Like they've been, they really struggled. They've just been all over the place this year. But like they've been pretty good again lately. So. I don't know. This is a bit of a tough game. There's some okay price tags in it, but it's not a lot of dudes that are just going to like blow through them either. So, What you got anything here? I mean, like Siakam, I think is always like reasonably interesting, just because like he tends to be really low owned and has a real wide range of outcomes. But I don't know. I don't have a ton here.
Yeah, they did rule out Paul Watson. Toronto, and they did rule out DeAndre Bembry. Yeah, I know. It's not really.
I'll just give you a hard time.
Not very relevant guys, but they did rule them out. I'm gonna have to project Rodney Hood and Gary Trent in just in case they do play because they might tonight for Toronto, which would change a little bit of the conversation. Gary Trent would essentially play like the Norman Powell role. That's what I'm expecting him to be on this team. Not as good as Norman Powell, obviously, but he's going to play a role. Yeah.
Yeah. He's real different. He's bigger than Norman Powell. So, like, I think he can probably hang. Like, he's not like an awesome defender, but he's bigger than people think. And he can kind of hang a little bit out there. But, like, he doesn't do shot creation at all. Like, and Norman Powell does a ton of it. So, I think that's probably a better fit with Lowry and Van Vliet. Like, I don't think Norman Powell is a very good fit with CJ and Dame, actually. Like, that doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. That now you've got 3 dudes that, like, their best skill is creating offense for themselves with the ball in their hands. Like, I don't know. Trent, I get it because, like, Trent was actually, no, I don't get it because Trent was still under team control next year and Powell's not. But I guess they're just trying to shake it up. So good for them.
I thought Trent was a free agent after this year. But I didn't. I thought that was the case, but you might be right. He might have still been in team control.
I think he might be restricted free agent. I'll check that.
Right. Right. So we really need to double check and make sure that Hood and Gary Trent are playing because Paul Watson's out, DeAndre Bembry's out, so it might be Stanley Johnson's season or something tonight if all these dudes are out. Not like I can't imagine you're really playing him in fantasy a lot, but in DFS, but he might have to play some real minutes for this team if those guys can't give him minutes. And I would like to double check and see if Trent does play, would he start? Or are they just going to go back to like Bain starting or Boucher starting and then Siakam playing at the 4? We really need to double check that just because we don't know how that's going to shake out now with Gary Trent in town. But say, Trent is out and Hood is out and they want to play Siakam at the 5, we might get Stanley Johnson starting tonight. So that one is something to keep in mind. But outside of that, I think Siakam is still a play in this late, Andrew. He's 7,900 on FanDuel. We really liked him the other night. Price tag is one of the things why we like him, and he's still underpriced a little bit. So I like him. Lowry finally came down a little bit on FanDuel at 7,300. I think that's more amenable versus AK on DraftKings. That's tough for ceiling. That's tough. Boucher is the other one. I don't know if you're really into that now that he's center, but he's 5,700 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. Not exciting price tags, but Boucher's one of those random dudes that could get you like 50 on any random night,
Yep. It's a bummer he's the center again on FanDuel, but I mean he has been for a little bit now. But he was definitely more fun as a power forward play because he plays like a center and does has that range of outcomes that a center does. So I was pretty into him more there. But yeah, Gary Trent also is a restricted free agent, so they're going to be able to match whatever he gets. So and Norm has a player option for 11 million, which he will almost certainly be opting out of. I mean, that I can report that right now. He's going to get an $80 million contract. So we'll see.
And I got nothing on the Phoenix side. I did just push projections to reflect the Raptors guys potentially being in there, Trent and Hood. But we want to double check and make sure that they're playing. So I'm not really sure on that.
Right. All right. So that'll do it for the games. You got any last words here? Thanks, Noel.
Last words. I feel like trying to dig for tournament things. Like I think the Colin Sexton thing might open up like Yeti Osman or something because he's still cheap, by the way. Osman is still cheap on FanDuel. DraftKings, he's 46. That's not as exciting. So that is tough as a last word for DraftKings. But FanDuel, Yeti might become a little bit of a nice little thing in tournaments if we get those news late.
It's way late too.
It's way
the game
late.
Is 10. Yeah, there's a 10 o'clock game, Atlanta and Golden State, and then that game is 10:30, and that's it. So it's like a half hour after anything else. And there's only one game at 10. So.
And it does open up like Darius Garland more too, and like I like Garland over someone like Conley on FanDuel, who I just don't think has that ceiling that I'm really looking for. I think Garland certainly has it without Sexton in there. His rates just take another step because Sexton projects for like a 30+% usage rate. Like him not being on this team is a massive swing. In terms of he's the one that creates most of the shots. So it could open up some things late in GPP. I think in general tonight, like I know a lot has happened, but it's the NBA. It's 11 games. More could certainly happen. I hope that timing-wise, we just get it in a way that whatever happens, we get some nice ownership. Because the stuff that has already happened, like the Luka stuff and all the other things, they're going to pick up ownership. So I'm kind of hoping that if something does happen, we get it in a window that is favorable for us.
It's a good call on Jetty because like he's cheap enough. He's 3,700 at small forward on FanDuel that he's getting 3-4% ownership. But like it's not going to get much higher than that because we're not going to get the news till much later. And like if it turns out there's no Sexton and we've got Jetty in a starting role and basically playing point guard, or like splitting that with Garland and it's the ball handling duties. Like he's like, that's like he's probably a coin flip to be a tournament winner at 37.
Yeah. Like I think 30+ in terms of a ceiling becomes a thing for Yeti fantasy points and like 3,700. That's awesome, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a real score.
And he's gonna stay sub 5% owned, I think, just because it's too difficult to keep that slot open that late because they're like the games are gone. Like, I mean, there's a real risk of ruin here, so make sure you've like planned out your backup plan here, but because it could get real ugly because there's nothing to switch to. But you know, there's a lot of reward there, so keep that in mind if you want to be a little wacky and reach for the stars and let your light shine. Hope you all do. Pacheco. Another one in the books. Should be a wild night tonight. Stick around, stay close to your computer. Obviously, that goes for each and every night, but man, it could be a wild one. We will talk to you all. We'll be back on Monday with more podcasts and wishing you best of luck in all your contests this evening.